Welcome back, or if it's your first time here, thanks for dropping in. Plan today is a 2-day trip. We're going to go down the Dart, out to sea, up to Brixham, spend the night in Brixham Harbor, and then tomorrow come back. This is all part of my master plan to sail as much as I can over winter, try and pick the weather, and take our opportunities when we can. So this little 2-day trip is in fact a cruise in company, and the company in question is John on his Mark II Cornish shrimp Freuer. We're coming down the river sort of midday-ish. We timed it to catch the current going north to help us to get to Brixham. Hopefully we'll get there before it gets dark. It's kind of late October and we've got a light northeasterly. Quite like it to be a bit more easterly so we can get up the coast a little bit better. Looks like we will be beating a lot of the way. Out of the river entrance, and we've got a little bit of swell. As predicted, the wind is pretty much northerly, which is not ideal, but hey ho. We've got about 8 to 10 knots, so full rig, fairly lovely sail. Let's get going. I do have a slight issue this afternoon. The steel plate on the bottom of the rudder, which can lift up, it's retractable, sits in the mud up, obviously, but it does get a little bit caked in the soft Galton mud, which means occasionally it needs persuading to come down, and this afternoon it cannot be persuaded to come down. Probably a season's worth of sitting in the mud twice a day has jammed it up there. This is not a huge problem, except I do get a little bit of weather helm, and the shrimper gets quite a bit of weather helm anyway, and that kick down rudder plate really helps. Certainly helps you correcting, get back on track. Without it, I'm having to work the rudder quite a bit, which is easily done, but it does make my arm ache. First world problems, eh? I'll give it a big prod with the boat hook when we're safe in Brixham Harbor. John is clearly enjoying himself as well. We're having a lovely sail this morning. Solo sailing, even solo day sailing, is great fun. It's really rewarding, incredibly relaxing, is basically mindfulness. But it does bring with it some complications. You've got to think a bit more about safety. You've got to double check your decision making, and there's nobody to share your experiences with. I suspect deep down some of the motivation for producing content for YouTube is this desperate need to share the experience with somebody. But solo sailing in company is the best of both worlds. It means if you're a grumpy old git in a boat, you don't have to have crew or somebody else there getting in the way and spoiling your solitude and enjoyment. But you've got another grumpy old git in a boat, in a different boat, to share your experience with, to cross-check your decision making, your tide, your wind, whereabouts you're going, and also your safety. My first port of call will be phoning John up if something desperate happens. It won't, but it's really reassuring knowing he's there. There are, of course, plenty of organisations that are there to support your sailing. I'm thinking, from my point of view, Shrimper Owners Association and the Old Gaffers Association. And they are very good at organising national and regional events to get people together. It's all great. But they do tend to be a little top heavy, and there's nothing quite like a local group of people. And in the Dart, we've got a small but growing group of similarly minded people with similar boats. And the intention is to do an awful lot more sailing in company, small groups, perhaps a little further afield. And we have a variety of mini adventures planned for next summer. If you're interested, pop me a line in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. After a couple of happy hours beating up the coast, we finally make it to Berry Head, entrance to Tor Bay. Brixham's just beyond. As usual, there's a bit more swell here, but it was really nice to crack off those sails and start to reach into Tor Bay. John had quite sensibly gone a little bit further offshore to avoid some of the swell. And about now I picked up my phone and read the text from him, which basically said, let's get a move on. The light's fading. It doesn't look it on the video, but it is getting on for about 4:30 late on in October. So yeah, the light was going. It was never going to be a big problem, to be honest. Brixham's really, really easy to get in the dark, and we're both very familiar with the harbour. Berry Head is home to the highest and the shortest lighthouse in Britain. I'll let you work that one out yourself, but it's true. And from this angle it's really obvious the huge quantity of rock they've taken out of it. The old dock is still there. And that quarried cliff face is absolutely vertical. They only really stopped quarrying, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s, when effectively they got up to the perimeter of the Napoleonic fort on top of it. Round the breakwater and into Brixham Harbor, heading for the town quay, and our thoughts turn to, well, the pub really. Next morning, moored side by side on the town quay, it's a good opportunity to look at the fairly minor differences between the Mark I and the Mark II shrimper. Vickers there behind Fryer. Vickers the Mark I, Freyer's the Mark II. They're both outboard examples, so it's a pretty good comparison. Notice the deck and the cabin of the Mark II is slightly raised, slightly higher all the way around. The Mark I cockpit is altogether deeper and bigger. The Mark II is shallower, but it is self-draining. The anchor well on the Mark II is slightly shorter. The bulkhead's been pushed forward to make room for the lovely hatch. Whereas the Mark I has a bigger anchor well, but of course no hatch. Time to make our way back down the coast to Dartmouth. We've got the same current running in the opposite direction this morning. It was fun going past the fishing harbour, especially in a small boat. Can get quite tricky. Luckily, I think most of the fleet are taking advantage of this really good weather to go out and catch some fish. I should be back round there this evening, buying some. We've got a little less breeze this morning, but there is the promise of sunshine. So the plan is to go back round Berry Head, head south, and hopefully it's pretty much a dead run, or at least a broad reach, into Dartmouth, and then I'll be going back up the river to moor up. Now this would have been a really good opportunity to play with my new asymmetric spinnaker, but guess who forgot to put it in the boat? So the sun did actually come out, and it was a really lovely morning sail. We had a great time. To be honest, the current was carrying us, so it wouldn't really have mattered much what we did. We'd have ended up where we wanted to go anyway. But it was great fun pretending we were expert sailors going downwind. And whilst John headed offshore again to go the long way round, I decided to use the current and shoot between the East Blackstone and the Mewstone. And here we are back in the Dart. It's been a lovely couple of days sailing. I headed back up the river to moor up and left John playing in the harbour entrance, enjoying his autumn sail. Thanks for watching, everybody. Goodbye. Catch you next time.